hit that record button, and then coming into the Pineapple Podcast.
I like it. It's really soothing.
Yeah, dude. So this is another Pineapple Podcast. This is yours truly, Austin Hughes, your designated host, as per usual. And today I'm here with Josh Duncan. Josh Duncan.
Old workmates.
Old workmates. Cut this trash off there.
I like that. That's cool.
Yeah, dude, it's pretty soothing.
How did you get the idea to do that?
I
Grocery
don't
store
know.
Music.
Everybody who's like, I've been on this wave of like listening to this guy Benny Sings lately. I don't know
Okay.
if you know who he is.
Does that have anything to do with grocery store?
Well, okay, so I listen to him, right? And like I'll put on his like Pandora station or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And like I just think it's like groovy music. Like I just think it's like cool. Like all the songs are cool, and like all the related artists that come up are like really cool. But everybody tells me I'm listening to like elevator music, and I'm just like, I don't think it's elevator music, but like, and so then I was just like, I wonder, maybe I've lost touch with what like elevator music is. And so I was playing some of it, and I was like, wow, I kind of like this stuff. And then I came across grocery store music, and it's like,
It's perfect.
yeah, it's kind of like awesome. Like I love it.
Elevator music with a twist.
Yeah, it's like with a very it's a lot fresher, you
Okay.
know.
Yeah. Is this pineapple like a prop for you?
Yeah, kind of. I had to get one like regularly.
I was about to say, do you eat it after a while? Or you
No.
just- oh, come on now. You can't. You have to eat it.
Well, the thing is
Make
like,
it juice.
yeah, well, it just gets old. Like,
Do you know how to check them if they're bad or not?
yeah,
You just like
yeah,
pluck it.
yeah, it's bad.
It's bad
I'll tell
already.
you right now, it's bad. Yeah, I've got to go get a new one today. I need to start just like maybe like freezing them, and I
Mhm.
can like mark them, like carve into them.
Yeah,
And
just
so I
make little
can,
faces in them. Honestly, that'd be cool.
yeah, and then just like, I don't know, like chuck them at people's houses or something. I don't know.
Oh, you probably get a charge for that one.
Yeah, if they catch me, you know.
Only if they catch you.
Yeah, if they see all these videos I'm posting with these pineapples, and then these, but yeah, Josh, tell everybody like a little bit about yourself if they don't know who you are. Like, who are you?
Well, I'm Josh Duncan, and let's see, not much to me. I'm pretty mellow. I just like growing stuff. I like farming. I like psychedelics. I like learning books, stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
And met Austin. He was a cook, and I was baristaing at the same place, and we talked about podcasts, and we always hit it off and like talking about hallucinogens and stuff like that.
Yeah.
I went to school for anthropology, and that's like the study of human culture. It was kind of interesting, but I'm probably not going to use that unless I write a book or something, and I
Yeah.
can like put that in the title or like in my name, like I did anthropology. But other than that, it's not really a good field, I guess,
Yeah.
money-wise. So now that's why I'm trying to get into sustainable agriculture, having my own farm and stuff, and being able to grow my knowledge and learn how to make the ecosystem fully sustainable on itself. So that means like I can do work in it for 4 or 5 years, and then for the rest of the 30, 40 years down the road, it'll continually sustain itself without like me necessarily going in there and working in it. So I can
Mhm.
go in. My idea, what I'm gonna like, I got this whole thing set up almost in my mind. I got a friend over in it's like Hollywood, South Carolina, or maybe somewhere in that area. It's like country land, and he's got like 200 acres or something that he inherited from his dad. And basically he says that he'll lease it to me, like 10, 12 acres or something. He'll lease it to me for pretty cheap, like $60, $70 a month or something, so I can get started off, set up. And what I'm gonna try to do is get some grants, because apparently you can get like some pretty good grants from the government and stuff for sustainable agriculture, and like people, young farmers and stuff trying to get into it, they can help you out. So if that all works out, then I'll just have to go in there and set up the infrastructure, which is like irrigation. We'll need the irrigation ponds and stuff like that. They have like a good underwater spring there,
Mhm.
so it shouldn't be too hard. I can probably dig a couple ponds or something, and then that'll set up a good irrigation system. but I'm gonna be focusing on. Probably gonna do 5 or 2 3 acres. I'm gonna do a permaforest, which is basically, like I said, a whole ecosystem that sustains itself after a while. Like you have the trees that like makes the perfect ecosystem for all the birds to get in. The birds can like help fertilize the lower shrubs and stuff, and the shrubs will put in nutrients that the trees are taking out, and vice versa. But the thing is that everything in that system is going to be medicinal or edible. So it's
Mm-hmm.
like you go in there and everything is going to be to your use. So if anything happens, shit hits the fan or something, you have an area that you can go to and always have a way to eat pretty much.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah. And then the rest of it, the other 5 acres or so, I'm going to organic farming, sustainable farming, no-till farming, which is basically like, so regular farmers, they till the land, and if their weeds come up, they till that out and stuff too. But what that does is it makes it so the weathering and the erosion is picked up, and then you have to like change over the field every now and then and like rest it. But with no-till, what it does is the weeds will come up, but it's beneficial for the ecosystem of the plants that is growing. So the weeds that are coming up, you're making sure there are the right ones, I guess, that they can put the nutrients that you need back into the soil of a particular plant. And then something different that'll have is shrubs around like a certain plots. So it'd be
Mm-hmm.
like raised beds and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
And I've watched YouTube videos, and apparently you can make a good bit of money from a small amount of land. So I'm gonna try to get into that.
Yeah. So, where did this desire come from? Because you said you went to school for anthropology, but it seems like a lot of what you've been learning and you know putting in work towards lately has been agriculture.
Well, like I said, um, anthropology isn't necessarily a very good monetary
Yeah.
decision. Like,
Yeah.
I would have to go to get a PhD and then study 20 years of some stuff that I don't really necessarily interested in it to build credentials and stuff like that. I've learned a lot of cool things with the degree. I learned it was a good education. It was a good experience going to school. But I feel like a passion of mine is to grow things.
Mhm.
Um, I like helping people. I like serving the community, and I feel like with agriculture, sustainable agriculture is the best way that you can help people around you, and it's the best thing to fight, not like fight the government, but to like, um, how to say, makes things so that you can fend for yourself. Like you
Mhm.
don't have to rely on the grocery stores. You don't have to rely on like people feeding you. You can like have that. It's a powerful experience, I guess. And same with like sustainable energy. You're like figuring out how to like get your own electricity with like hydrodynamics or something like that. Maybe wind power, solar power stuff. There's all sorts of different ways that you can figure out how to sustain by yourself and not have to rely on other people. And same with businesses. Like if you own your own business, do your own thing, you're not making anybody else's money. You're making your own money, and you can build on your own like passions and stuff like
Mm.
that while helping everybody else. So it just makes sense to me.
Yeah. Yeah. You know who Killer Mike is?
Mm-mm.
He's like he's like a he's like a rapper that stayed pretty. He's older now, but he like stayed pretty low key until actually relatively recently, where he got into this like this duo and blew up and got all these like album of the years from these music blogs and stuff, and still isn't like huge mainstream like recognized or whatever, but for a while like he rapped with Outkast and
I'm not good with names. I probably would have heard some of his music or something like that.
yeah, he's hard to find, he's hard to know the name of, like Run the Jewels. You ever heard of Run the
Yeah, I've
Jewels?
heard of it.
He's one of the guys. So
Okay.
he's older. Both of those guys are pretty old. They've been like doing hip hop for a super long time. They're lucky that like at this point in their career they had something like Run the Jewels that got around the way it did.
Mhm.
But Killer Mike, he's got an album. The album he released before he got into the group with Run the Jewels, and the song's called Ronald Reagan, and he talks about how, uh, one of the biggest. He's got a quote from it, but I'm gonna butcher it if I try and say it. But the gist of it was, um, you know, how are my people gonna, feed themselves if they don't know how to grow food, if they
Right.
don't know how to make bread, if they don't know how to do these things for themselves? It's like then you have to rely on somebody else, and if you have to rely on somebody else, like it's in that other person's incentive to take advantage of that
Right. You're
person.
just feeding into the system, and you kind of like once you get into that, you can't get out of that system. You know, because you're completely reliant. Once you do things for yourself, that you're not necessarily restricted to that same system that they want you to be in. You know,
Mhm.
if that makes sense.
Yeah. So I mean, is this so you kind of have like a section of it that's going to be for like the sustainability of
Hmm.
yourself, of course.
Right.
Eh,
Well, yeah, that half would be basically growing sustainable organic food, so I can like sell, have it for myself. The other part is basically just gonna be for basically the person who owns the land, because I'm
mm,
not gonna necessarily be able to reap the benefits of the place in 20, 30 years, because I'm gonna be moving on to different things. Having my own land and stuff like that. But he'll be able to have a place where he can always have food, like four or
mhm.
5 acres. But that's a lot. If you have to something ever happens, you never know.
Yeah.
If there's like these fucking meteor or some shit,
Yeah.
I don't know, but there might be a situation where you have to live off yourself for a little
Yeah.
while, and I feel like he's into that thing, so that's why he's has an incentive to let me, work on his land for a cheap price, cheap lease,
Yeah.
stuff like that. And he's a good friend of mine.
So is he like preparing for like a zombie apocalypse or something?
No, not necessarily, but
Yeah.
he's like mindful of it,
Yeah.
I guess. Not
Okay.
necessarily a zombie apocalypse, but anything. If there was a war
Uh-huh.
or, anything, there could
He
be a
just
number of
wants
different
some sort
things.
of fallback, I
Right.
guess. Okay.
Fallback.
That's pretty cool. Dang.
Yeah.
Well, so like so you're saying you don't want to stay with this for too long. Like are you planning like is there like a long-term plan for you to have your own farm and stuff
Right.
like that?
I
Yeah.
want to have it until I build enough revenue, of course, to like get my own place, get my own land, and once I get the experience, I feel like it wouldn't be that hard if I know what I'm doing.
Mhm.
And you don't necessarily have to build or buy the land all up front. You can make payments on and stuff like that. I'm sure get loans, so it wouldn't be too difficult.
Mhm.
It'd be nice to be in like Costa Rica, something like that.
Yeah.
Good fertile soil, fertile land, good a lot of sun, a lot of
Yeah.
rain, good for
Yeah.
plants.
So have you already started working on the farm?
Uh, well, no, not really. I'm waiting for him to come back right now from the Caribbean. What he does, he'll go down the Caribbean and buy sailboats for about like $6,000, 7,000,
Mhm.
and he'll sell it back, makes a little bit of adjustments to it, and get here and sell it to rich people for a couple hundred $1,000s or so. He'll do that 2 or 3 times a year, and then he doesn't really work at all. So
What?
yeah.
Good grief.
Yeah, apparently he does the best time to buy is during hurricane season. So last hurricane season, whenever it was, he went down there and bought it and just left it there pretty much until the season went away, so you can actually safely sail it back.
Mm.
It'd be interesting. I would definitely want to do it. Apparently, you can't make enough money from it though if you ship it back. So if you sail it back, you're making most of the profit.
Mhm. So it takes some unique skills to actually be able to pull that off.
Right.
Yeah.
He's been sailing his whole life, so that's
Yeah.
what he's into. That's his passion.
Yeah. Um. Dang, man. That's
Do
crazy
you
how all that like played in.
do you like farming and gardening and stuff like that? You said you've had an interest in it
Yeah,
before.
I've always had an interest in it. I've just never been in the spot to, like, I don't know. I guess like go for it, like
Yep.
do something with
You have
it.
a balcony?
Yeah.
You can have a little balcony garden,
Yeah, I
little
guess.
stand-up garden.
Yeah. I don't
Grow your
know.
own spices and stuff.
Yeah, I tried and I set them on fire.
How did you set plant?
Yeah, I just are you cold?
Oh, I'm a little bit cold. I got this vent going on.
Yeah, I can turn it off. Hold
Yeah,
on
you
one
got
second.
that
Talk about the balcony garden for a second.
Okay, yeah. So balcony gardens, you can do a couple different things. You can have things that sit on the rails, and then you can plant things on the outside or in the inside. It's good for herbs and flowers, stuff like that. You can also have some stand-up gardens, so they sell at Walmart. It's pretty compactable and you can fit a good bit of plants on there. When I used to live in an apartment, oh yes, this sweater looks great.
No problem, man. Yeah, but yeah. So to the story,
Now I'm all
basically.
sophisticated.
Yeah, I know. People are gonna be like, "Oh, the anthropologist is on."
He just got instantly smarter.
But yeah, I was like super. I would just drink and then I would go out on the ledge and like smoke cigarettes. And like one night I was just like really really drunk, and I had my plants, and I one of them was just like, I don't know if it was just like not retaining the water well, but like it had just dried out and died. Like,
Yeah.
and so it was just like super like dry, and like the ground was super dry, and I just tossed a cigarette in there and like fell
Lit
asleep,
up.
and that thing just lit up. And then I came out the next day and were on fire and
Yeah,
died.
good thing to do with soils, add like perlite, vermiculite, stuff like that to help
Yeah.
retain the moisture and slow release it, so you don't necessarily have to water it as much.
Mhm.
So next time you do it, just mix your soil with some perlite. It should be a little bit
Yeah.
easier.
Yeah, I just kind of like got that soil stuff you get from like Walmart or whatever, and just
Mhm.
dumped it into some buckets and then threw some seeds in there and like grow, you
Right.
know. I don't know.
I'm also interested. I can't legally do it, but growing cannabis.
Yeah.
I love cannabis. I love smoking. I love the quality of it. I love
Mm.
the medicinal value.
Yeah.
Pretty much everything about it. Like, it's not for everybody. I feel like,
Mm.
definitely some people can have anxiety from it. I've heard that before.
Mm.
I've heard people who can't really smoke because they have panic attacks. So it's definitely not for everybody. For me, it's a good way to wind down. I don't really drink alcohol that much, so it's just an alternative for me.
Mm.
Just sit home, smoke sometimes, smoke with friends. It's good to commune with other people with it.
Mm.
But that's also what I want to get into, as well as growing that. Maybe if it's ever legal here, I'll go to a legal state or something and do that as, an occupation.
Mm-hmm.
I would love that.
Yeah. Speaking to yeah, it seems like a lot of people are starting to have the conversation of, because I feel like there was such like a pushback on weed, like it just being like, like just like being like, pot will rot your brain and all this different stuff, and everybody was like, there was such a pushback of like,
Mm-hmm.
no, that's not true, that we kind of like pendulum swung to like
Right.
almost like this is good for everybody, and then now we're kind of like correcting that a little bit and
Yeah.
going like, well, there are people who like have some psychosis bouts
Right.
with like on cannabis, so it isn't good for everybody. It's not
No.
a bad, inherently bad thing, but there are some people who
And it's not good to overdo it either. Everything is good in moderation.
Mhm.
You shouldn't be smoking every day, all day, because
Mhm.
it's not necessarily that it'll make you lazy, but I guess it could make you lazy. Yeah, in certain points, like if you smoke in the morning and then smoke throughout the day, you'll fall asleep and then maybe not be productive as you could have been
Mhm.
if you weren't.
Yeah.
But you just got to be aware and you got to be responsible with it, just like anything, just like with
Mhm.
alcohol, Coffee's given me panic attacks before.
Yeah.
Because I've drank too much.
Mhm.
3 or 4 shots of espresso, and my heart feels like it's about to beat out of my chest or something like that.
Yeah, and that's what I think is, I don't know. I feel like it's just really ridiculous when you have like a whole situation of like the government's not stupid to an extent, but they know like everybody's using this drug, THC. It's all over the face of the country. But instead of, legalizing it and employing professionals who can advise people in their usage, and they're just letting like 16-year-olds just figure it out, like
Right.
as if they have any understanding of tolerance and dosage and how your body mass is going to
Right.
affect this.
Especially with edibles.
Yeah, good grief, dude. People have
I don't
horror
even eat
stories with edibles. Dude, I had a friend. We just went to college. Like, I just got out of high school, and I remember being downtown, and she started at College Charleston, and I ran into her downtown, and like, I had just started smoking, and I was like, yo, like, you want to go you want to go smoke? Cause like I wanted to go smoke, and she's like I don't do that. Like, and I was like, why? Like, and I couldn't understand why she was so aggressive towards it. And she was like, I had an edible at a party, like, and I like freaked out, and I was like, that doesn't make sense. Like, cause I was just like, I've never had like, cause I had been smoking for a little bit, and I was just like, what? It's like, even my first time, I wasn't
Yeah.
like freaking out. Like, that doesn't make sense.
Yeah, apparently edibles metabolize a little bit different than your body, so it's more closely related to a hallucinogen than like a recreational euphoric feeling that you get when smoking it. You know.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I like hallucinogens too, but not if you're surprised by it. You know.
Yeah.
You got to go into it knowing what to expect.
Yeah, there definitely has to be a little bit of planning with hallucinogens. Like, I always try and like, I don't know. I always try and like talk with people. Like, I don't know. For some reason, like I'm always like, whenever I hear like, I'm talking to like younger people, like, and they mention like something with drugs. I'm just like, have you ever tried that? Would you try that? Because I just want to get a feel like if they would, and then if
Yeah.
they say they would, I'm like, hey, can I just give you some tips? Like, because
Right.
I just don't want them to have to go through like some stupid stuff that I went through where, like, I took some hallucinogens with people I didn't like, or
Right. Bad set.
bad setup, horrible location.
You got to be comfortable.
I didn't know what was about to happen,
Mhm.
and I just took them, or like I
What-
didn't know
what
how
was-
much to take, and so I just took
What
them.
was them, like acid for the most part?
Acid, I felt like I kind of knew what was gonna happen. Well, okay, so the stupidest thing I ever did with acid was I was over at a friend's house, and there were 5 of us, right?
Mm-hmm.
There were these 2 people that were dating, and like,
To get in an argument or something.
well, they did a lot, and they were kind of just like forced themselves to come over.
Oh, okay.
And like
So it was
me and my other buddy, we didn't know that the last friend like had acid, but he had it, and he just like in the middle of all of us hanging out, like just took it. And then he told me he was taking it, and I was like, I want to take it. So I didn't even know like I was about to take this, and then I took it, and then I showed my other buddy, and then he took it, and then these 2 people are like sitting outside, like not knowing that all 3 of us had taken acid. And my buddy who took it first was just like, he's like, we're not gonna, like, I don't want to take it with them. Like,
Right.
I don't want to take it with them. And I was like, well, are we gonna ask them to leave? And he
Mhm.
was like, I don't know if I could do that. That'd be weird. And I was like, well, we can't. Like, I was just like, he's like, we just won't let him know. And like, he had these 2 big speakers, like this big, and I put on like my favorite Marvin Gaye album, and I started it from the beginning, and as soon as that album started, my body just felt like it was melting, and I was laying on the floor, and like I got done with the first song, and I paused the album, and I looked at my buddy, and I said, dude, I'm just gonna be honest with you, there's no way that they're not gonna know that we're on this, because I was like, dude, I'm about to be like a slime, like just like all melty for like the next like 4 hours. Like, there's no way. And I just turned that album back on, and he told him, and they took it with us. But it was just, the whole trip could have been better, because there were just these little moments where it was like in my head I was like, oh, like they know that we were trying to like kick them out of here, and then
Yeah.
like it's just like little stuff like that where it's just
You
like,
can like feel the awkwardness in it.
yeah, and awkwardness is not fucking fun on hallucinogens. It makes you feel like everybody's out to like kill you or something.
You think too much about it. You're not thinking about what you should be, I guess.
Yeah.
With acid, I try to stay away from it for the most part. Probably have only done it a handful of times.
I don't like it.
Yeah, well, the thing is about acid is like you don't necessarily know how much is gonna go on it. It's not like they're gonna overdo it or anything, because you pretty much get what you pay for. But sometimes they underdo it. Sometimes it's like research chemicals. Sometimes you don't really know what you're
Mhm.
getting for the most part, unless you like trust the people, But even then, there's like such a variety to the like the quality of the acid and stuff like that.
Yeah.
With mushrooms, for the most part, you know what you're gonna get. You know how to expect the trip, I guess, in a way.
Mm-hmm.
And you can gauge it a little bit better.
Yeah.
Yeah, the first time I've tripped mushrooms, I was probably like 13 or 14 years old.
Whoa,
Yeah.
that's really young.
let's see, maybe I was a little bit older. That does sound kind of young. It was a sophomore year of high school, so maybe I was like
Oh
14,
yeah.
15. I don't know.
Maybe like 16,
Okay.
16 or 15.
Yeah.
That
Okay.
sounds more like a sophomore. I don't know.
Okay. Yeah.
You might
Probably.
have been like young for your grade though.
Right. So I probably started smoking when I was 14. Did acid, or I mean, did mushrooms when I was 15 or 16. So that's about right.
Mhm.
But anyway, we had this field in the city I grew up in Orangeburg. It's like a cow field, and everybody talked about how there was mushrooms out in it.
Oh,
And so I didn't really I didn't really know about it. I heard it was just like a big rumor, pretty much, and nobody really went out there and got any because, it was a drug. It was a bad drug, so people didn't want to go crazy on it.
Yeah.
And that was pretty much the idea of it. But I just started to go out there to see what it was like, and I remember they're everywhere, like the biggest mushrooms I've ever seen, even till now, growing out of every cow patty, like you could see. And I ended up gathering like a whole Subway bag full of them. And at this point, I didn't know about dosage or anything. I was with this girl, my friend of mine, and her dad told us like where to go, pretty much, and he knew about it. And he was like, "Yeah, you got to go out there at 4 o'clock in the morning after it gets done raining real hard, and it'll pop up." And sure enough, 4 o'clock in the morning, we go out there, and it just got done raining, and there was mushrooms everywhere. So we collected as much as we could. We went back home and we made a tea, pretty much. We had like a little boiling stove, and we just compressed
So
it.
did this girl's dad like help you like figure out like how to make the tea and like
Yeah.
all
Oh,
this?
he pretty much told us where to go, and he came back. He told us pretty much how to do it.
But he didn't tell you about like dosage or anything like that?
No.
What? Dang, that's crazy. You'd
No.
think he'd like be like, hey, like maybe only take this much your first time or something.
Well, what I think really what happened was we went out there, and he was already asleep. He told us about it, how to do everything, but he pretty much just he was
Oh.
all right, you can do it. And then when I got back,
Yeah.
he wasn't there. We just made the tea.
Mm.
And then the girl I was with wanted to go to a party, so we were like, okay, let's go to this party. And we were driving, and then I was like, I'm starting to feel weird, I'm starting
Yeah.
to feel really weird. And then I had to pull over. Like, it was really awkward. It was really eerie because we were passing our high school.
Yeah.
And then I just started feeling crazy, so I like drove to the back of it, and I stopped. And so I was like sitting next to the football field, kind of, and the lights are like going, and I was like, oh my God, I had to like get out and like sit down, and I was like, literally felt like I was gonna pass out or something. It was
Yeah.
a really intense feeling. And then ended up driving, like, pretty much obviously couldn't go to the party. She was tripping pretty hard too, but she didn't take as much.
Mhm.
And so we just ended up going back to her house, and like I just laid there on the couch for all night. Couldn't go to sleep. Had like I don't know. It's hard to explain a trip. Like, once you get into like a full high dose trip like that,
Mhm.
it's almost like your brain is an antenna, and it's picking up on different frequencies from other dimensions. If that, like, different thoughts are being shot into your head that aren't your thoughts, but they aren't like they're not crazy or anything. It's just like, that's not your thought process. That's not your thought pattern.
Mm.
And it's like, for me at least, like, I had, what bioluminescence is?
Mhm.
So it's like, the way I explain it is, sometimes they have like a camera that you can go to like the ocean or whatever and put your hand in the water, and it shows like streamers of colors and stuff.
Mhm.
But I was in this dark room, and there was just streams of bioluminescence flowing through the darkness, flowing through the dark space. Every
Mm.
time I closed my eyes, there was like ancient letters and words just scrolling through my space and my head vision. I don't know how to explain it. Like, if I closed my eyes, it was right
Yeah.
here. It was like a projector of different thoughts and stuff. And I was scared, for sure. I was scared for a couple hours, and then like the closest thing, like the only thing I could go through my mind was like, I'm dying, pretty much. Like, I'm going to die. But once I got that into my head, I accepted it, which is not like like,
Whoa.
I didn't accept dying, but like I accepted this is what the feeling is.
Yeah.
And then I got like a big sense of comfort.
Mm.
And then once you, like, apparently once you get a high dose, anything, high doses of a hallucinogen is called ego death. And then
Mhm.
you basically, it's hard to explain, because like everything that we're processed to think is that we're a separate, like, individual with all these certain characteristics. We have our own story, we are, I'm Josh Duncan, for example, like I've I explained to you who I was in the beginning. That was my ego. That's who I am processed to think. Like, you know,
Mhm.
it's, it's like I'm an actor in this game. But once you know that, when in the trip, you realize that there is no separation. Everything is the same. Everything is oneness. At the deepest level, everything is truth. At the like once you really deep reach down into who your essence is, it's like God, pretty much. It's the
Mhm.
closest. Basically, God is such a, um, I feel like a misinterpreted subject. I feel like a lot of people think of anthropomorphic being, kind of
Mhm.
watching over things, and there's like a physical heaven or physical hell and stuff like that. But with mushrooms, it really showed me that, heaven is within you. The God, or what you think of God, is not what really is. God is everything. God is the energy makeup of what, I don't know. You can't. It's unexplainable. That's the thing about it. But it's
Mhm.
not what you think it is.
Mhm.
But on mushrooms, it shows you that, and that's why, like, before I took mushrooms, I was kind of a Bible like thumper. I really enjoyed reading the Bible, but after that, it really ramped up, and I just like enjoying reading anything, any kind of truth, biblical, Hindu, anything that I can get into, so I can relate that to the experience I had with mushrooms, because it
Mhm.
showed me that truth, and then once I did that, everything else like pointed back to that understanding that everything is one, and within us is divine consciousness, and that's why I'm passionate about it, psychedelics as well, because it showed me things about myself and my surroundings that I couldn't possibly be conscious of without it.
Mhm.
Maybe with like years and years of deep meditation or like really hard studying, but I wouldn't get to the point where I was that day, which is really crazy.
Yeah, and I kind of want to touch on like, dude, like, gosh, there's so much to unpack in what you just said. But like, to start, like, one thing I've said a couple times on this podcast, but I haven't had maybe somebody who like has a story to relate to that besides mine. But like you said at the beginning of that story, um, but that you so this is your first time taking mushrooms, you're scared, you felt like you were going to die.
Yeah,
Like that is for most people categorized as like a bad trip,
right.
right?
Well,
But you came out of it with such of an enlightened perspective on things.
well, yeah, I feel like with any bad trip, a bad trip is just an intense trip that you can barely grasp. It's an intense trip that you can't feel comfortable in. But for me, all the intense trips, all the hard ones to cope with, I've learned the most from. Like if
Hmm.
I'm having a good time and stuff, yeah, I'm like it's a good trip and stuff, and I like get the, like on a lower dose, 2 or 3 grams, like I get the fun out of it, I get the laughter out of it, I get like hints here and there of like an epiphany, a
Hmm.
self-realization, a realization of what consciousness, what the world is, what this reality makes up is. But on a higher dose, it's just like you're engulfed in it, and you don't know how to respond to it.
Hmm.
Like, but that's when you learn the most from it.
Yeah. Well, and that's what I've talked to a couple people about because, like, I was hanging out with a friend last night and I was um, talking to some people and they were talking about how just recently they took like an acid trip and he kind of like called me out in front of
Mhm.
everybody. Like, I didn't really, it was like, uh, I've hung out with him before, but I hadn't hung out with the other people before. But he was saying I was talking about mushrooms, and I was just talking about how like, there's with acid, there's not necessarily like a neurological like a physical neurological benefit with acid, but with mushrooms there's neurogenesis and like
Mhm.
just only on that level like mushrooms is kind of just better for you.
Right.
It's like it's going out and killing a cow and cooking the meat on it and eating that as a hamburger compared
Right.
to like acid is like having McDonald's.
Right.
Like when
It's
it comes to
organic.
psychedelics.
It comes from like, to me it has its own spirit. and it
Mhm.
comes from the earth, and it's the earth trying to tell us something in a way. Like,
Mhm.
it seems alien too, but by alien it just like it's what we don't know. So
Mhm.
if the body of the earth is conscious and it has its teachings that it want to show us, then in our mind that would be kind of alien.
Mhm.
But that's what I do feel. I feel like the earth in some way put its mysteries into this form, into other plant psychedelics like peyote, wachuma, ayahuasca, all these things to deepen our realization of what we are and how we connect to the earth itself, so that we can live in a more harmonious ecological like way, you know what I mean? So I feel like,
Mhm.
the earth is putting this stuff out so we can get it and then be more in harmony with it, if
Mhm.
that makes sense.
Yeah. Yeah, no. Yeah, and that's the thing, like I feel like a lot of people, as far as like the trip culture, um are looking for um are looking for a good time. And it's crazy to me because you hear like lectures from like Terrence McKenna,
Mhm.
and like never is he talking about, he's like, yeah, so I was going to this party and like
No.
and I took these hallucinogens. Like, no, he's like, he's in his room with like some candles lit in
Yeah.
like a meditative
Right.
physical posture, and he's blasting off, and he's trying to understand what the fuck is going on inside the walls of his head.
Right.
um Even though like, one of his quotes is like, he says, when he took the hero's journey, the
Yeah.
5 gram
5 grams.
doses,
Yeah.
he talks about how it feels like a bomb bigger than Hiroshima and Nagasaki combined went off like
Right.
all around you, but yet the only person who can experience it is you.
Yeah. And it's crazy to think about too, because there's people in the other room, but you're sitting there and you're just on this complete other
Yeah,
world.
it's like the whole world around you is shaking.
But um, the big thing about it, obviously, everybody can't do it. Same thing with cannabis.
Yeah.
It's if you have problems with schizophrenia in your family,
Mhm.
it could be a tipping point.
Mhm.
Obviously, you could take these psychedelics and it could either heal you, or in those situations it could hurt you. It could put you in as not necessarily that you won't be schizophrenic afterwards or anything, but I'm
Mm.
saying is like it could trigger you, so it's early onset or something like that.
Mhm.
Not saying that's so people have to be careful, know their mental capacity before they go into it.
Mhm.
Like really be conscious of what you're going into it for. Like you said, people have this party mindset, and I guess you can do that on acid, but mushrooms is not like that. Ayahuasca would not be like that. DMT definitely not like that. You won't be able to do anything on DMT. You're just laying there.
Mhm.
Have you ever seen anybody trip some DMT?
I've seen
Like
I,
fully blast off?
I've seen videos. I've never been there physically with somebody. I've seen one video of somebody I know, and then you actually showed me a video
Oh yeah, I got
of.
a couple videos on my phone.
Yeah, yeah. You showed me. It was just like you showed me like the next day after, you saw somebody take DMT, and he's like rolling on the ground, like.
Yeah. They're basically not connected to the way they explain it, they're not connected to their body anymore. Like their essence left this physical reality and it just went into another one.
Mhm.
But every time I've ever seen anybody on DMT, when they come back, they say this is the most amazing experience they could ever imagine. Like they couldn't even put it into words. There's some things like even to this day they're still recollecting, or not. That's not the word, but you know what I mean. There's still things popping up that they're like, oh, okay, that was from that trip, and this is what I got out from it.
Mm.
It's like a dream kind of. If you have a really intense experience in a dream or
Yeah.
something, it'll follow you for the rest of your life. And every now and then you'll pick up on things about that dream that's relating to you in your life. If that, like, do you have stuff like that?
I think so. I mean, do you have any like examples of this? Like what? Like, have you experienced it before?
What do you mean? The dream part?
The DMT, like,
Oh no, I've never done DMT myself.
really? Okay.
Yeah.
Is
Um.
there like a is there a hesitance for some reason?
Yeah. Honestly, I want to wait till I'm about 25 make sure my brain's fully developed, make sure I don't have
Dude.
any kind of
Dude, yes.
mental
People do not talk
illnesses
about the
on
full development of your frontal lobe. They do not
Right.
talk about that enough. Thank you for bringing that up. Sorry.
like, I mean, mushrooms could do it too. They could
Mm-hmm.
mess you up, but I feel like DMT is just so powerful that for me to go into it, I have to be a lot more mentally mature. I have to
Mhm.
be a lot more meditative because a lot of
Mhm.
people they go into it and they freak out, and if you freak out, you're not really concentrating on what it's trying to perceive to you. You're just like so worried about everything that's going on. You're worried about like not dying pretty much.
Mhm.
But if you relax, fully mature, you have a meditative mindset that you can go into and really get everything that you can out of it, and that's what I want to do with it. Same
Mhm.
with ayahuasca. Ayahuasca is different because it's like a DMT trip expanded into like, what, 7, 8 hours or something like that.
Mhm.
So I want to do that in a traditional setting, with a shaman.
Mhm.
But apparently there's a lot of like fake shamans down there, so it would be important to
Do
find
research.
some right ones. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. What's the deal with that? Like, 'cause a lot of people have been talking about the whole like fake shaman thing. Like, how important is the shamanistic aspect of the process? Like, could you not just, I mean, say I was here and I had a glass of ayahuasca, like I couldn't just take it here and experience it? Like,
Or you could,
yeah.
for sure.
So what's the deal with the fake shaman thing? Like,
Well, apparently I've never done ayahuasca, but from what
mhm.
I hear, that the shaman has these songs, and when they perform the songs during your trip, it helps guide you through your trip, and like it helps with
Mhm.
your I guess your mental throughout it. Fake shamans, they don't have these things, so you're kind of at it alone, like you would be doing it by yourself,
Mhm.
and it wouldn't necessarily be guided in a way that it would, I guess, with a shaman.
Mm.
Like I said, I've never done it, so I wouldn't know the difference between if I was guided or if it wasn't. But the interesting thing about ayahuasca is, as you know, it comes from like two different plants that has to be combined together.
Mhm.
One's the DMT leaf or whatever, and the other thing is the vine from a certain plant that's
It's like
basically,
starts with a B or something.
yeah, it makes it so your brain can take in that DMT. Because if you take a tea with the DMT containing plant, it won't. Your brain has blockers for it, but mixed in with the root or whatever, it has an inhibitor in it, so you can actually experience that.
Mhm.
And the this like the chances of finding these two plants and combining them to have that experience is like what, astronomically high. To think
Yeah.
about, like, you have to get the exact same things, and then apparently these shamans say that spirits from other plants told them to combine these two things to have this particular experience.
Hmm.
So you can look into that. It's pretty crazy.
Yeah. Well, yeah, and I just like, I mean, like to and gosh, it's crazy to think, like, because I'm talking right now to you, but like a part of me is also like acknowledging like the audience listening to this and thinking about like people who are on, there are definitely people, like, I've been on this, like, I don't know, like, campaign, I guess, lately, talking to people about the differences between you know taking something like I don't know what it is, but there's such a heavy opposition against like uh like mushrooms and peyote. I don't know if it's just because they're not
Well, it's
as easy.
illegal.
Well, all of it,
Yeah.
is generally, like, so I'm saying like people who, like, it seems like generally in the culture, like, people are like acid, ecstasy, like these things, and they're like these are awesome, like, trips, like this trip, dude, I was rolling so hard.
Ketamine.
Yeah, ketamine, like taking like, and it's just like and they try and categorize those with mushrooms, and then they go, well, I saw a guy on mushrooms one time, he just cried the whole time, and I don't want to have a bad trip.
Right.
But and that's the thing where I'm trying to have this conversation with people and go like, no, what you don't understand is these aren't about like the uncontrollableness of these drugs is what gives them um, superiority to these other things
Right.
that you're tripping on, is because like these other things that you're tripping on, like essentially what you're telling me is that you're able to master them in your mind. Like this thing masters you.
Yeah.
Like, yeah.
You don't really need to try to control a mushroom trip like that, because
Yeah.
I feel like once you're gonna be fighting it the whole time and trying to control it, what the best thing that it teaches you is to relax
Mm-hmm.
and just like to let it be. You know, that's a life lesson. You can't always worry about these things. You can't be so tense. You have to just relax and let things come to you where they should.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, it just shows that this reality isn't as finite as we make it out to be. There's a lot more to this reality than meets the eye.
Mm.
See, everything that we see is just based on our own perception. Everything that we see is like from our senses, our touch, and all these things. But you heighten your senses with mushrooms. You expand your brain's capacity with mushrooms so that you see things in a higher perspective and a higher consciousness. I feel like once you get to
Yeah.
that point.
So, okay, sorry. I like panned off there for a second, but I'm going to come back to what I was originally going to say. So it's so weird to me. It's so weird to me to think about that statement, because I've heard that statement before where you were talking about how other plants communicated to a human
To the
to
human.
combine two other plants.
Right.
And like I feel like on mushroom trips I've never been given like clear objectives like
Right.
that. It's been like almost as though I was born with these, or not, maybe I wasn't born with them, but like I grew up and because I didn't do any drugs or drink or smoke tobacco or any of that stuff when I was in high school. Like I was pretty just
Straight
sober, straight edge all throughout high
That's
school.
Probably a good thing for your development.
I guess, yeah. And I mean, I was just, just like you were talking about, like Bible thumper, like went to church, like I was a intern in my youth group, like all this different stuff. And like,
I'm still really into that stuff.
yeah. I'm not saying you're against it. And like, we could probably have a whole other podcast about, my views on.
You ever heard of Gnosticism?
Oh, dude, dude, Gnostics.
Gospel of Thomas.
Yeah, dude, we could have.
All right. Anyway, keep
Yeah,
going. What were you saying?
Sorry, we'll touch on that in a second. But yeah, it was almost as though I was like, through that time, like I was able to develop, but there were like a few of these like little like shackles that I put on my consciousness and my mind and the way I thought. Almost like every time I was in a conversation or I was thinking about an idea, I would look to the right, maybe where this idea was leading me,
Mhm.
and I would go, there's a wall there.
Yeah.
That means I can't go there. But little did I know, like, I was the one who put that wall there.
Right.
And then when I was taking something like mushrooms, they were going like, fuck this wall. Like,
Yeah.
just threw it out the window, and I was like, whoa.
It
There's
wasn't
like,
necessarily you either that put it there. A lot of those things are cultural and social constructs
Mhm.
that are like kind of put on you, and then
Mhm.
you're made to believe these things.
yeah.
If that makes sense.
Yeah. Yeah, and so it's strange to me when I hear, that there was such a maybe I'm not understanding the quote necessarily correctly. It might be more abstract. There's probably like a deeper understanding or lesson to the shamans talking about that, but it
Mhm.
is crazy for me to hear that, because it almost makes me like long for that, clear objective, when most of the time, like, I feel like my benefit from mushrooms was just like a freer thinking.
Right. Well,
Mm.
maybe the teaching isn't necessarily always going to be clear and objective. It's not going to be like, a voice inside your
Yeah.
head telling you these thoughts. It's like more of a feeling, an
Mhm.
intuition, like a little glimpse of what it is. And maybe with the plants, they were just doing the plants so much that it was just around them all the time. And then maybe the shaman was just having this psychedelic experience and then was walking through the woods or something, and then intuitively, like, recognize that these two plants put together will make this
Mhm.
make this
Yeah.
ayahuasca, probably one of the most strongest natural hallucinogens in the world. Well, actually, it definitely is. I can't think of anything else
Yeah.
other than
Dude, people are
ayahuasca.
stuck on it right now because they
Yeah.
can't figure this shit out.
Yeah.
Dude, but I mean, seriously, like, I mean, I think I haven't heard a conversation ending, like, not conversation ending, but like, I don't know, if you get on like a lot of subjects, people can go like, you know, have you heard of this? Oh, but have you heard of this? Oh, but have you heard of this? And that
Mhm.
can go on forever. But like, as far as like stuff that like just is crazy that people don't understand, as soon as ayahuasca comes to the table, people go, yeah, like that's, I
Yeah.
don't know, like,
Ayahuasca, DMT,
yeah, people are just like,
the cult,
yeah,
aliens, stuff like that.
it's
I mean,
just,
all these things are just things that aren't like mainstream to the normal intellect, I guess.
mm-hmm.
So it's
Yeah.
hard to wrap your mind around.
What do you mean by the occult?
The occult
Yeah.
is just secret knowledge,
Oh, okay.
just stuff
Okay.
like that.
Yeah. That goes back to Gnosticism, though.
Yeah, that goes all intertwined. Everything's
Yeah.
all everything in the world is intertwined. Everything
Yeah.
is connected
Yeah.
in some crazy way or another.
So when you talk about Gnosticism, is it in like a, like, what have you been digging into with Gnosticism lately?
Well, basically Gnosticism, the main thoughts of it, the main like teachings of it comes from the Nag Hammadi library that was discovered in Nag Hammadi, Egypt. I forgot, like not probably like the 40s or 40s, I think 44 or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
And it basically has all these like scriptures that can be dated to like 100 AD, 200 AD, something like that, which is about around the same time that the New Testament, the oldest version of the New Testament was put out around like 200 AD or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
And it's basically books that's been omitted from the canonical like Bible. So
Mhm.
the Bible was put together by Constantine and his Roman Empire. Right? Did you know that?
Well, no, it was put before that. It was put together in the date that you previously recognized, which it was put together in the festival letter that was sent out after Origen, the disciple of John, did his travels through the first churches, and they recognized like that these were the books. That it was like the 200 AD, I think was.
Oh yeah, so
Yeah.
Okay.
Is that what you're saying? Okay.
yeah, it's about
Sorry.
around the same
Okay.
time. I mean, there's like letters and stuff that was obviously you can get and put down, but all the books like Mark, Luke, and John,
Okay.
or the first four or whatever, those
Uh-huh.
were basically put together through oral tradition first, and then after a while written down, and then
Mhm.
after a while like made into these books that people can like learn together with.
Mhm.
And then there's basically different sects of early Christianity that believed in different, kind of like slightly different sects, kind of like what we have now with Protestant and Baptist,
Like
and
denominations.
different
and stuff,
denomination, early Christianity, and Gnosticism was one of the early denominations. And it's basically what made it different than, I guess, the other denominations, like you said, was that it's focused on that basically God is within, and
Yeah. Mhm.
basically heaven is not a physical place that you go. Well, it's not a place that you can. It's not above the sky. It's not in the clouds. It's not in this reality. It's within yourself, like, and that's
Mhm.
what it really touches on. And the point of the Gnostic is to find the hidden knowledge within yourself, basically. So it all
Mhm.
wraps back around to the mushroom and in its teachings. So the Gnostic beliefs and their understanding of reality correlated so closely to the experience I had with mushrooms that it was like, okay, well, this obviously is the true teaching, and it was omitted for a more power-driven reason, pretty much. So in my belief, I think it was Constantine. I mean, did you know? You heard about that? The Constantine and his council or whatever, putting together Council of Nicaea, I think, something like that.
Yeah. So, yeah, I've heard about the Council of Nicaea. I don't think Constantine was there for that, because that was when that all went down. That was because the Council of Nicaea was still during the persecution of the church. Like you know, the dictator from the first Council of Nicaea, where all
Mhm.
the churches like sent their leaders of the churches together.
Mhm.
Like he talks about at the beginning of it of like the people coming in,
Mhm.
and the people who are coming in are they have like one eye, they have like they're missing arms, they've got scars across the front of their bodies.
Wait,
Like
what is it? What are these people?
they're the people who were leading the Christian church at the time.
Oh, okay.
And well, they were still under persecution, and when Constantine came into power, he was the one who stopped all that. So for him to be at the meeting wouldn't really make sense, because the first Council of Nicaea, they were still being persecuted.
Well, what's the name? Can you look that up?
Yeah.
I hate brain farting. I hate saying
no, yeah,
different
you're
names
good.
that I'm not supposed to.
What am I looking up?
Just type in the Council of Nicaea and see who was the main emperor during that time.
Yeah, sure.
But anyway, like I said, I was always into the Bible. I've read the whole thing, probably not like straight up, but like different books at a time, like really digest it.
Yeah, so okay, it was under okay, so maybe I've got my facts wrong. Yeah, so it was under Constantine the First. Was he there though?
Yeah, I mean he ran it.
Really?
Yeah. But I think what this does is the council put together the Bible for what it is now, but what they did is they only put in things that didn't make you realize your own divinity. So if anything that like mentioned the concept of divinity within yourself, that I think it was removed. I think that religion or Christianity as we know it now is set up to believe that there is a pedestal of Jesus and God, but I feel like Jesus came down to let us know that what we are. He says we are sons and daughters of the living Father. He's like, it's interesting.
How so do you think this was, because immediately my mind jumps to, so a bunch of guys come in there, they're tattered and broken from persecution and all this stuff, and then they've got this king who has the power to do, emperor who has the power to do, like, make this go away, essentially. Do you think he was kind of like, hey, all this divinity stuff is it's going to make these people go crazy and think they're more than they are.
Right.
You take that out, you give me the book I want, and I'll make your lives just a little bit easier.
Okay, well, yeah, kind of like that. But if you think about Constantine, he was a big, like, he killed a lot of Christians before he converted. What happened was there was a war that he went to, and then he saw something in the sky that resembled the cross, the Christian cross. So from there on, he said, well, we won this battle, so it was definitely because of this cross that appeared in the sky. You can look that up, too, I'm sure.
No, I've heard that. Yeah, I know what you're talking
then
about.
he went in and changed his belief to this Christianity, but he didn't change his heart. Like, he's still in that power-driven, like, mindset. So what he did is he made this so that he can still have the power over people's minds, so they don't know that who they truly are.
Mm-hmm.
So if that makes
Well, and it is strange. I hadn't really thought about this until now, but it is strange that, like, one of my biggest issues with modern day Christianity is the like the reward incentivizing that some people interpret the Bible as, where it's like, believe in this and heaven, believe in this and moral upstanding, believe in this and like this multitude of pleasures and eternal justification and all these things. But and you see Constantine, and he doesn't believe in the religion because of or believe in the teachings of Jesus because of validity of what was said or resonation with the beliefs. He believes in it because it won him a war.
Yeah, won him a war. He got something out of it.
Yeah, Gosh.
And he doesn't necessarily have to even understand the principle of it, like the teachings, the really
Yeah.
the deep philosophical, like, other reality that
Mhm.
it brings to it. Like, for most of Christianity, most of the text that comes out of it, Jesus' words are in parables. So you're going to get a surface understanding of it. But the more gnosis you have, the more knowledge you have, the more understanding you can get out of those same words, because you're seeing it in a different perspective than you would have if you're just a common person, if that makes sense.
Wait, say that one more time. Explain that.
So parables,
Yeah.
parables, right?
Yeah.
The way
Yeah.
Jesus is
Yeah.
taught, they're basically stories
Mhm.
that are metaphorical, I guess is the word for it.
Mhm.
And if you don't have that much understanding of, say, the history of it, the mindset of the early Christians, if you don't have the understanding of
Like the context of the
context,
religion that he was placed into.
right,
Yeah.
then you get an understanding of it, but it's only at face value, what it's saying, like what the parable is telling you. Then you're like, okay, well, I could see this thing. I could see this teaching that's coming from it. It's really simple. But the more you read into it, the more understanding you have, the more knowledge you have, the bigger the perspective is, the deeper you can go into that parable and get more things out of it. I can't really, off the top of my head, think of any. I should have wrote some down, honestly, and brought them. I didn't even know we
Some
were gonna.
parables.
Yeah, some parables that have deeper meaning than what, say, the
Yeah.
common Christian would perceive it to be.
Well, dude, let's just run through some. So what about like the mustard seed one, where like the farmer throws the mustard seed on the thorns, he throws it on the path, he throws the seed onto the rocks, and then he throws it onto the fertile soil.
Well, what is the seed? That's the first part of the parable. You have to think of, well, what the seed is,
Mhm.
and it could be or it could be interpreted as that this is the knowledge, or this is the grace or truth or anything like that. And one
Mhm.
is put into good soil, then it could reap a better quality fruit.
Mhm.
So all throughout all throughout biblical text, this goes back to farming, which is interesting. There's always reaping and sowing from what you give. If you have teaching and understanding and put into good soil, so it's good surrounding, then what you're gonna get is an understanding, like, a person. I don't
Mhm.
know. What do you think of that parable?
I think it's what you said. Like, I mean, I think there's some people. I think there's you tell all about
Hmm.
this, good news and knowledge that you have, about, the grace and truth and, the justice that's being distributed, but there's some grounds that are ready and there's some that aren't, like, I mean, there's some, like, if you throw it on the path, it'll be trampled by the people walking. If you throw it in the thorns, it'll grow a little bit, but then the thorns will choke it out. If you throw it on the rocks, there's no soil, it can't grow. And then you
Right.
throw it on the fertile soil and it grows, and it becomes its own plant. And then, people don't usually take it this far, but you think about it, like, if the plant grows, it itself will produce seed and
Mhm.
cast seed, just as the farmer did
Right.
himself, or be reaped. Yeah.
I mean, but if you type in, you can probably type in like Gnostic version of the parable of the mustard seed, and there's probably a whole different interpretation based on the Nag
Yeah.
Hammadi.
Nag Hammadi. Let's talk more about that, because I haven't heard about that before. What is?
The Nag Hammadi is
Yeah.
just basically, okay, so what happened was the story goes that this farmer in Egypt was maybe plowing his field or something, like doing farmer
Mhm.
work, and then he noticed that there was a cave or something. And this might have been the Dead Sea Scrolls, but I'm pretty sure it's the Nag Hammadi. Basically, he found that there's a cave on his land, so he went through the cave to figure out what was in it, just inspect it and stuff, and he found like containers, two big containers.
Dead Sea Scrolls. That's what this is.
This
yeah,
is the Dead
yeah.
Sea Scrolls?
As a farmer, he was throwing rocks in caves, and he hit
Oh,
one of
okay.
it and it shattered, and he
Well,
was like,
I
"What
got
the
the
fuck?"
two confused,
Yeah, yeah.
but it's pretty much the same
Yeah,
thing.
yeah,
Like,
yeah.
they found these Nag Hammadi these texts basically that was sealed into a container very similar to the Dead Sea
Okay.
Scrolls, and they dated it to around 100 200 AD. So it was about right in line with the timing and the dates of the New Testament.
Huh.
So, and there's even people who believe that the Gospel of Thomas is even older than the Gospels in the New Testament, because it doesn't necessarily have a plot to it. It doesn't necessarily have a like a storyline to it. It is all it is listings of sayings that Jesus had. So back in these days, not everybody was illiterate. So what you would have is mostly everything would be a oral tradition.
Mhm.
So the first thing they're going to write down is the sayings, right?
Mhm.
And that's in my opinion that would be. So it would make more sense that that would be the older than sayings. And the sayings in the Gospel of Thomas are also in the Gospels as well, but then a longer version pretty much. So it seems like the sayings in the regular Gospels is shortened
Mhm.
from the Gospels of Thomas, or from the original sayings.
Mhm.
And there's some crazy stuff in the Gospel of Thomas too, like um if you read it at its face value, it doesn't make any sense at all whatsoever. Like, it's a parable that you can't even read at face value because it makes no sense. Like, look up the parable of the lion. Just say Gospel of Thomas, lion. The lion and the man, or something like that. Saying 7, that could be it.
Um.
Okay, so it says, "Blessed is the lion which the man eat, and the lion will become man." Oh, I can't read that.
And cursed is the man whom the lion eats, and the lion will become man.
See, that doesn't make any sense at face value, does it?
What the fuck? Blessed is the lion which the man eats, and the lion will become man. And cursed is the man whom the lion eats, and the lion will become man. Wait.
Doesn't make any sense at a face value.
Yeah,
Like,
the
you can't
lion
get-
becomes the man in both of the instances. The lion will become man, and the lion will become man. So it's almost like a psalmic duplication.
well, one's eating the other.
Yeah, but so it goes, blessed is the lion which the man eats, cursed is the man whom the lion eats. But in both instances, it ends with the lion will become man, and the lion will become man.
Right.
That's strange.
The point of this is showing that there's deep metaphysical meaning to these sayings, and once you dive deeper into the gnosis, the knowledge within yourself, you can basically figure out what these sayings are. Because if you type in the Gospel of Thomas, the first verse in it, let's see if they have that.
What am I looking
I
for?
don't know how we got into this subject. We were talking about psychedelics and farming,
Yeah.
and now we're into the Gospel of Thomas.
Dude, it's whatever.
Oh, anyway,
What am I looking for?
it doesn't matter.
Oh, okay.
The point is it's a lot different.
Mhm.
And there's a lot more to it, and it's a lot more metaphysical. And the understanding, basically, is that divinity is within each and everybody.
Yeah.
Everybody has divine consciousness. It is basically not good for yourself to think of yourself as just a simple mortal being with the only thing driving you is your own ego, and there's nothing else spiritually capable. There's no, like, you know what I mean?
Mhm.
Everybody has their own potential, and everybody has the greatest potential there is, because everybody has the divine consciousness. But once you understand that your ego isn't the main driver of success, if that okay, so if you completely erase your ego and then you try to tap into this divine consciousness, then what you're going to get is an engulfment of this divine consciousness. It's like a glass or something. So if you have your understanding, you don't have any room for this ultimate understanding, because you're so watered down by your constructs, your social constructs, what you're taught, and your limits. But once you completely remove all these things, then all that's left is light. All that's left is this pure love and this understanding. I haven't got to that point yet, and I feel
Mm.
like that's the point of everybody's life. That's the point of living. Like, if you ask the point, what's the point of life? That's what I think it is
Mm.
to figure out who you are, understand your self-realization, and then affect people around you in the same way so they can see this in themselves,
Mm.
if that makes sense.
Yeah. It's almost like figuring out who you are so you can break down who you are. Like I don't know, cuz it seems like I'm just trying to narrow in on
What
like
that,
what I am so that I can destroy the like I,
yeah.
and so I can just,
And a lot of belief systems have this same idea.
mhm.
So Hinduism and obviously Buddhism talks a lot about the ego. It talks a lot about Maya, which is the illusionary concepts of this world, and to break ourselves away from the illusion and to see things for what it truly is.
Mhm.
And it's like people hearing this podcast that don't understand like where I'm coming from probably gonna think I'm crazy, which
Mhm.
I wouldn't blame them,
Yeah.
because these things aren't regular. There's not things that you particularly will, like a normal person would wrap their head around or even consider. Like,
Mhm.
this reality isn't the only thing that there is. I feel like there's a whole invisible landscape, a whole reality that we can tap into through the chemical doorway in our own brain.
Mhm.
And that doorway is, I don't know, getting too deep into myself right now, I guess.
No, but I mean, dude, I feel like
And I don't know all the answers. Nobody
yeah.
knows all the answers. There's a lot.
Yeah.
There's a lot to everything. To even think that we can understand it all is worthless. We can't. We can,
Mhm.
like, maybe get hints of it. But that's about it.
Mhm. Yeah, I was listening to somebody talk about how it's really funny how we want to, as humans, we want to search and explore as far spatially as we can. We're always trying to explore, like
Like space,
to space, to smaller stuff, to
the
deep in the
ocean.
sea, like all these we're just trying to go places. Like
Right.
we're trying to go to see all these different
Mhm.
places. But we're never trying to stay in the same place and just move on a plane
Right.
because it's hard for us to like wrap our minds around like that there's like but I mean we see it though
Right.
because like we have like we have we have methods to see things that we don't see, if you know what
Right.
I'm saying,
Mhm.
like we have
Like
like
different frequencies of radios and stuff like that.
yeah, like that stuff is always
It's
around
yeah.
us, we just can't see it.
Right. Have you ever heard of cymatics?
Mm-mm.
This would be a cool thing to bring up on your video if you can.
Yeah.
If it might be a YouTube video, so it might be copyrighted.
Cymatics.
Yeah, cymatics.
How do I spell that?
CY.
Oh.
No, CY. M A. Yeah,
Like that?
cymatics. And you can click that third one.
Oh, I've seen this.
Yeah, so basically what cymatics is they have a soundboard and they put sand on the soundboard and then pump it with sound frequencies basically and turn up the hertz.
Mm-hmm.
And then the higher the hertz goes, you'll see that the vibrations on the soundboard will manipulate the sand so it turns into geometric patterns. So it's pretty crazy, and that kind of shows that reality is made up of different kind of waves, and in cymatics kind of proves that it's sound waves.
Wow. And so this guy is looking at all these different hertz, and they're creating.
Different geometric
Yeah.
patterns. But the interesting thing about these geometric patterns is they also show up in nature too.
Whoa, dude, look at that sand.
Yeah, it's perfect too. Once you get to the frequency, it's a perfect geometric pattern. There's no inconsistencies to it. So that for me that goes to show that maybe not everything that we perceive is based on like tangible things. Maybe there's an underlying sound
Yeah.
frequencies, some things that we can't like perceive that's making up our reality. Almost like this whole reality is a uh, like a video game,
Mhm.
um, or a
Simulation or something.
simulation. Yeah,
Yeah.
like a simulation.
So do you think like the do you think possibly the way like cuz like you know like when you're like on a psychedelic and you'll maybe like look at like a wall or you look at like a carpet, something that's like stagnant, like pretty plain, and you'll start to see like these ripple
Yeah.
like patterns and
Mhm.
stuff. Do you think that comes from cuz I've always kind of thought that maybe that comes from like the way that our like certain parts of our body are like vibrating
Right.
and like when you're on psychedelics like you know your muscles tense up,
Mhm.
your your pupils like there's so much physical
Right.
changes that like for maybe a natural breath pattern or just like a way that your body is pulsing your blood through might just change the pace of your body, and through that pace you're starting to see like different
So you're saying
patterns.
biologically that that's what's causing the patterns is like your what you're saying is like your pace of your blood and stuff. So
Like the
that in turn
the
going through your
frequency is
eyes and
which,
stuff, so you can
yeah.
see things. It could be. I think it's more so in your mind. I feel like
Mm.
what's happening is maybe you're start so on basically you're talking about mushrooms and acid where you see these are really light doses of like when it's like you can take 2 or 3 grams and see things wave, and I
Yeah.
feel like that is touching into the fabric of the universe. I think like you see things waving, that's on a low dose. You know that maybe this isn't tangible, but thing is when you're on DMT and like I said, I haven't done this, but through all the people that I've ad- administered the DMT to,
Mhm.
they've all had this similar experience that right when you take it, you see the complete makeup of the fabric of time, and it's like the way they explain it is like grid patterns, and they can actually see how everything is made up, and everybody had the same experience. That goes
What
to
do you mean the fabric of
the
time?
fabric of our reality. What makes up everything that we perceive is they've recognized it as the way they say it is like extremely pixelated.
Yeah.
So like a video game. Basically the best way to explain it.
What?
Yeah.
Whoa, that's crazy. I've never heard that from D&D
Oh yeah,
before.
everybody who's taken it said this pretty much the same thing. And they
Yeah.
also said that um a couple of them said they saw higher beings, like saw their higher self, met
Mm.
with aliens, had a couple of them said that they in the middle of the trip they could tell that they were being worked on, like they've had a feeling they're on a like a surgical bench and they're being worked on by beings in other dimensions, like not necessarily like affecting their physical body, but I feel like working on them in a spiritual sense.
What does that mean? What do you what?
Yeah. So DMT is a strong substance. It'll put you it'll put you like these
Dude.
aliens aren't like physical aliens that they'll go to, so there won't be like some aliens from another.
They're not ET. They're not beep boom
No.
bam bam beep.
No,
Yeah,
they're
yeah.
like interdimensional beings.
Yeah.
So basically that okay, so basically we work on multiple we think our brain functions in multiple dimensions. That we were only like really particularly aware of one, obviously. But once on psychedelics, some things like it blurs the line. So I feel like once on a DMT trip, it's completely blurred to the point where you can interact with other dimensions a lot easier. So these interdimensional beings can, I mean, contact you. They can like, you can. I've had a couple people say that they've seen their spirit guides and they taught them about their grandparents or something like that. They said how he apparently he was having trauma about his grandma dying or something like that, and that gave him peace. Talked about that specifically, and
Mm.
then other people having I don't know, it's weird.
Dude, I had that happen on mushrooms. Like I took mushrooms. It wasn't. It was. maybe my third or fourth time I
Mhm.
took mushrooms, and it was probably one of the highest dosages I had taken, but I took it like right after my grandfather died, and I didn't think anything of it because I thought I had like processed it all,
Mhm.
and then the mushrooms were like, no, you haven't.
Yeah.
And they like made me process
Yeah.
it, and like it was really tough,
It
but I
makes you
came away
sit.
from it, and I was like, wow, like now I truly feel like a resolve, like, and I've actually been able to process other deaths
Right.
better because of that.
Right. And the interesting thing about mushroom is they're actually, I don't know if they're prescribing or they're trying to get into the process where they can prescribe it in Oregon and Colorado and
Yeah,
stuff
I've been
for
talking about that. They're trying to get it legalized medically.
right.
Mhm.
And but for the medical usage of it is if people, cancer patients, are terminally ill and they're dying, they'll
Mhm.
give them these mushrooms so they can cope with that their death.
Mhm.
So what these things is the mushrooms are helping them cope because it's showing them that, life is great. I would never want to like never want to off myself anything like that.
Yeah.
I enjoy life. I enjoy the process of life.
Mhm.
But the mushrooms will show you that there's other things. This isn't it, and then not
Mhm.
necessarily what's next is boring.
Yeah.
I don't know. There's a lot of uncertainties, but I feel like it helps you cope with these uncertainties.
Yeah. The company Maps has been working in European countries with natural psychedelics for a while now, prescribing them to people like that and
Mhm.
with PTSD and some people on this autism spectrum, so that they can understand like their autism better.
That's interesting. I never.
Yeah, like it because it's a self-awareness thing.
Yeah.
Like it really brings you into like a perspective of like, oh, I get like what I like am like
Mhm.
now, cuz you're able like, yeah, I don't know. It is weird, but like, yeah, like I'm definitely I don't know. Like I'm definitely on board with, cuz I don't know. Even right now like I'm just thinking about like all these things that have gone on in my life, and like thinking about like I had some like weird like one of the main reasons like I don't like smoke weed anymore is because like there was a point in my life where I was like hearing voices and
Mhm.
stuff, and they were like really like they were like argumentative. They were like always argumentative, and they were always like about me,
Right.
and they were always like very
Negative.
like negative about me, and like, dude, like probably an all-time low, like most depressed, most like horrified about the way like my view of other people's view about me was so freaking low that like I just couldn't trust people, like I
Okay.
couldn't. And so I stopped smoking. I went to see a therapist, and things have been better, but I've just taken like a hiatus from like psychedelics in as a whole, and now like starting to hear about people with developing early psychosis because of these
Yeah.
things. Like it kind of starts to make sense,
It
but
does
then
make sense.
also there's this thing of like, why the fuck am I having to be my own doctor when it comes to this stuff? Why
Right.
couldn't I have just gone to a doctor and said, hey, I'm taking these things, and not have gone to jail?
Right.
I would have had a doctor who was trained to go like, oh, well, let's run some tests. Let's figure something
Well,
out.
for most doctors though, they're not legally. They can't legally tell on you if you go in there
Yeah.
and say that, yeah, I smoke weed or I do these
But are they
hardcore drugs.
trained to deal with that?
Not necessarily. Not
Yeah.
they're probably not all trained to do that. They're mostly trained to ask you questions about your life, get you to tell them everything, and then
Mm.
give you psychotic medicines, basically, like,
Yeah.
which is
Which
a
I don't
real.
even know if I trust as
No,
psychotic.
you should
Yeah.
never trust those things. I mean, they're good for. I mean, they're not. They're good for certain people, of
Yeah.
course, and maybe at certain dosages in a certain amount of time. But I feel like our medical system is set up to keep people on things like that. Like the more money they can get out of it, the longer they can have you on it, the more
Mhm.
that like they'll benefit from it. But I feel like you. So do you think your therapy session, talking through it, was the biggest helpful thing of your thing? And also, do you think that maybe these voices weren't necessarily a negative thing, but showing you that maybe you have some kind of psychic intuitive power or something like that?
Never thought about that.
Yeah, I mean everybody has I don't want to say everybody has powers, but everybody has more psychic ability than they realize. And then sometimes when these psychic abilities show themselves, it could freak people out.
Yeah.
And then in return that would be diagnosed with, you know, you can disassociation, schizophrenia, all sorts of other things, more misdiagnosed, I should say. But it could be from you're just perceiving. It could be that okay, so where were you having these bad like arguments in your head?
Gosh, well, it was at home. Like, so I had just moved back home with my parents, and so in my room I could hear my parents speaking, and then I could also hear it would also happen like at work. Like, I could hear people like around the corner like talking, but then when I came around the corner, like, they weren't talking.
Yeah.
It was like freaking me the fuck out.
So yeah, it could be. I'm not saying this is definitely it, but you never know. It could be a heightened sense of, like, I don't know how to explain this. Like heightened sense of space time. So what I mean by that is maybe somebody was there at a different point of time, and you just tapped into when they were actually arguing, and from that resonant spirit, if that makes sense. So, like ghosts, a lot of people, when they perceive ghosts, what they're actually perceiving is the resonating energy of a spirit, pretty much. Do you believe in ghosts or any kind of?
I don't know. I've never really like.
Well, I mean, that's what they think is like basically.
Yeah.
There's different kinds of ghost encounters, but one of them is that you get in contact with a resident energy that's already been there. So you never know. You could have a heightened sense that you're just sensing or tapping into somebody else, and marijuana or cannabis could thin that barrier, because it is a mild hallucinogenic. But it could be other things too. Not that I'm saying this, but what I'm saying is there's a lot of different possibilities from mental things like that. Like, it could be a bad thing, but it could also be something that it's you who you are.
Yeah.
Like, for example, my girlfriend, she sees people sometimes that aren't real. And
Really?
that could be considered psychosis, but it could also be considered a psychic ability of some sort. Just being able, for that quick second, to have the barrier of reality so thin that you can see other people in other realities.
Yeah, this is crazy.
Yeah. So you're saying that you heard people, but you don't never know if there was somebody in another. Like, what we believe is what our reality is, just us. There's nothing else. But there's so many different realities, so many different dimensions. There could be multiple different, hundreds of millions of different people throughout the dimensions that you can in tune with, that you don't comprehend with, because you can't perceive it.
Gosh, man, I didn't even think about that. Because, I mean, I definitely think there's, like, other... I mean, I think it's scientifically impossible that there's not other planes of existence besides our own. But it's crazy to think about, like...
That could be other living people in these other planes of existence as well.
Yeah, and that there's these little, like, blips of gaps where, like... Yeah. They kind of like fold onto each other or something, and
that's what I like think about deja vu. How do you explain deja vu? What do you think about it? I've thought about it a lot, so I can tell you my concept of it once you get done with yours.
I mean, I've always rationalized it as it's it's almost like a lack of something in your brain, and so your brain kind of like tunes out for a second, but like you're still taking in everything around you, like your receptors are still working, but like your brain isn't processing it, and then like you come back in and you're just like, I've seen this before, but it's because like your brain was like taking everything in, but it wasn't processing it. So you're just like, I mean, I don't know. Like, that's how I've always rationalized it.
That makes sense, honestly. That's very rational. I'm not necessarily rational all the time. It's a good math thing. In my opinion, like, the way I think about it is, for some reason, the reason I think that I've seen it before is because I actually have experienced it before in a dream. So I feel like when
You experienced deja vu in a dream before?
No, I experienced what I like. So everybody has dreams. Like mathematic or scientifically, they prove that everybody can have up to like 4 or 5 dreams a night, maybe even more.
Mhm.
But most people don't realize they don't remember any of their dreams, don't even remember that they had dreams.
Mhm.
But what if that in a dream you had that exact experience, but you completely consciously zapped out because you don't remember the dream? But once the experience actually comes up in waking reality, your subconscious brings it up that you actually have perceived these things before, but it
Yeah.
was in a past time.
And so you're just like, whoa, I've been here
Yeah,
before.
because you actually
Yeah.
had been there before, but it was in a
Yeah.
dream.
Well, I was talking to you knew JJ at work, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. He was telling me the other day that when he was living in LA, he kept having this dream where he was like on this like he's on this like intersection,
Mm-hmm.
and he was like outside of his body, like doing like watching his body, like almost like, no, he was saying he was like first person, like he wasn't outside of his body, he was like looking through his eyes, and he was on this intersection, and he could run one way down the street, but he would just come back on the other side, and so he would just keep going down this way, and when he went the other way, he would just go down this way. He's stuck in this intersection. He said he had the dream for weeks,
Oh.
and it wasn't until he came to that spot. He'd never been there before, but then he came to that spot in LA and looked around, and he was like, whoa, and then he never had the dream again.
Yeah.
And he said it had no significance. He said he didn't meet anybody there. Like, he said he wasn't like special.
But
Like,
it was the same spot that he had in his dream.
yeah, he couldn't get out of that spot in his dream for like weeks, and then he went, and he just accidentally like came upon it, and
Imagine the deja vu feeling he would have got at that point.
gosh, do you know what I mean? Like, what the fuck? Like, are you kidding me?
Yeah, I've had deja vus where they last like a couple minutes, honestly. Like I could
Really?
tap into the deja vu, and sometimes in the deja vu, like in the dream itself, something would happen that doesn't happen in reality. So for example, I had a dream one time, so I had a dream one time, I guess. I was at work when I was working at 450, and I was typing away on the computer, and something happened, and then something broke or something, and someone screamed, something happened like that. So I remember when I was typing on the computer, I had that exact instance of deja vu, and I could honestly, I was like, all right, so somebody's about to scream, because I can
Mm-hmm.
like recollect that where it was the deja vu was coming from, and I could like remember what was happening after that deja vu moment.
Yeah.
But it doesn't necessarily always happen, which is weird.
So you
like-
were like prepared for something to go down.
Yeah,
and
I was
then it
prepared for
just,
something, but it didn't.
Whoa.
Yeah, it's almost like it was just a different reality, and it would have happened in another time or something. I don't know. It's really weird but sometimes I've done it that I could have that deja vu moment, and I could predict exactly what was about to happen. Like,
yeah.
I could have that deja vu moment, and I'll be like, all right, you're about to say something, and then you're about to do something, and then it would exactly work out in my head. And it's weird. It's almost like your brain has the ability to bend space-time. So in our mindset, we have a very linear perspective of time. So there's the beginning, and then there's an end. It's straight. There's nothing like the future is the future, the past is the past. But maybe it's not like that. Maybe it's a fractal, some kind of spiral, something like that, where you can interact with different time while you're in your present moment.
Mm-hmm.
If that makes sense. That's hard, kind of
Like
hard.
you've got access to like look across the
Right.
spiral at
Yeah.
different. Yeah.
Right.
Because I always think it's crazy that, and maybe this isn't along the same lines, but I always think it's crazy that I'm able to like sometimes remember things,
Mhm.
and then sometimes like not remember things. You know what I'm saying? Like sometimes you're like walking down in the street and you're like having a conversation with somebody, and then you're just like out of the blue, it has nothing to do with the conversation, but I'm just like oh shit, I totally forgot about my 4th grade teacher and like that thing and where we were and like all this different stuff, and then like my mind just explodes with all this information
Just
about
randomly.
just randomly, and then like I'm sitting here right now and I'm just like, I don't know. Like, I don't remember what happened, like, but I just remember remembering it. Like, yeah,
It
I don't
goes
know.
to show the potential of though, and the like how much we can do with our mind that we don't understand.
Mm-hmm.
And then maybe not only that we don't understand, that we can label as a bad thing if we do perceive things that aren't normal, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody has potential, and like I said, everybody has the psychic ability and an extremely strong mind. Not
Yeah.
mind in a strong mind like that. You're you're hard to, you know, insult or something like that, but at the point where like there's a lot of shit that your mind can do. Like the capacity of your mind, the ability that your mind can do, it's unlimited almost. And I feel like
Mhm.
that's the final, not the final frontier, but the next frontier. Everybody's going to be searching in space and searching through the waters, but the frontier is within your own consciousness and within your own mind. And have you ever heard of astral projection, or have you?
Astral projection?
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, I've heard of that. I don't know much about it though.
Well, basically, it's the idea. It's really taboo. If you talk to people who know it, they'll be like, well, anyway, what it is basically you can get to the point where you're laying there all relaxed and stuff, and basically the way you do it is almost like you're going to sleep. So your whole body is completely numb, but you don't let yourself actually sleep. And
Mhm.
I've never done this before, but we're reading up, and I wish I could. Guess I'm not ready for it yet. And honestly, I've never even met anybody who could do it, but you know, there's ancient texts about it throughout different people, like different kinds of people who all have like the same experience with what is astral projections like detailing, I guess. So it's got to be something to it, you know. There's got to be somebody out there who's at one point was able to astral project. But anyway, you can just send your soul out of your physical body so it can travel the universe, travel different alternate dimensions, travel under the water, wherever you want to go.
Hmm.
Travel space, time, anything.
What?
And like I said, I can't do it. I've
Yeah.
never met anybody who could, but it's got to be ability.
Yeah.
Some people, it's got to be able to do it. Or maybe it's just all a lie.
Dude, I don't know. That's insane. Traveling through time.
Yeah. Imagine that, like, when you talk about time travel, everybody's always like, well, if we get to the point where we can time travel, we'll fuck shit up because we can go back into time, and then we'll mess, like, affect, like butterfly effect, you know, you
Yeah.
change this little thing and it will alter the course of reality.
Mhm.
But if you're projecting your soul through time, there would be no way that you can interact with it. So
Yeah.
you'll just be a fly on the wall, just perceiving what there is.
Mhm.
And I feel like that's gonna be the future of time travel, is through your own mind.
Instead of actually like going back there and
Right.
you know
Physically going back there in a time
punching your
machine.
grandpa
Right.
and then he
You
doesn't
wouldn't
meet
be
your
able to do
grandma.
that.
Yeah.
You'd be basically a ghost.
Mhm.